As we join together in this moment, may we come in gratitude that we have the opportunity to gather in this way, even though we are apart. And may we find strength and hope in our faith that sustains us today and in the days ahead. I'd like to share with you a passage from the book of Acts, chapter 2, the passage about the Pentecost. When the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place. And suddenly from heaven there came a sound like the rush of a violent wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. Divided tongues as of fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages as the Spirit gave them ability. Now there were devout Jews from every nation under heaven living in Jerusalem. And at this sound, the crowd gathered and was bewildered, because each one heard them speaking in the native language of each. Amazed and astonished, they asked, "Are not all these who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we hear, each of us in our own native language?" All were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, "What does this mean?" But others sneered and said, "They are filled with new wine." But Peter, standing with the 11, raised his voice and addressed them, "Men of Judea and all who live in Jerusalem, let this be known to you, and listen to what I say. Indeed, these are not drunk, as you suppose, for it is only 9 o'clock in the morning. No, this is what was spoken through the prophet Joel." And he goes on to share the words of Joel and ends with, "Then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved." This is Pentecost Sunday, the birthday of the church. It seems a bit unusual for us to be celebrating this day while not able to be in our beautiful sanctuary. But in many ways it is fitting, for as special and sacred as our little church is, we, the people, are the church, not our historic building. And these times offer us an enormous opportunity to grasp the greater meaning of that truth. It's interesting that this passage today is about the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God, the Spirit of love rushing in like a mighty wind on Jesus' followers as they gathered together. Interesting because on Saturday the wind on our farm blew so hard across our hill. The whole time I was working in the garden weeding, it was definitely a welcome friend, keeping the black flies away. But on a deeper level, I thought about the wind of change, positive change, that God's Spirit brings into our lives when we are open to receive its touch upon us. Nothing remains the same. Everything becomes hope-filled. In the past, I've had a few occasions to crew on Ted's brother's sailboat as he raced his J105. Key to a good race is the wind, and of course how you are able to harness it. Once, however, just outside of Boothbay Harbor, the moment of the race started and the wind died down. At one point we were actually going backwards with the tide. It was the most boring, drawn-out race I had ever been on. No wind, really no race. No wind, no action. No wind, no action. If it wasn't for the rushing wind of God's Spirit that lit up those who follow Jesus' teachings, things would look different today. But the reality is that the Spirit did come upon them, and it changed them. And it didn't create a building, it created a movement. And as Christians, we today are part of that movement. And our actions need to give witness to that movement. And our voices need to be heard lifting up the words of that movement if we want this world to be the better place that it can be. The words of that movement are words of hope, words of love, words of acceptance for all. It was said that once the Spirit rested upon them, they began to speak in other languages so that all who were present could hear and understand. That's a remarkable thing on one hand. Yet on the other, knowing that the same language that unites all people is the language of love, it becomes clearer. What we celebrate as Pentecost is the culmination of all that Jesus taught his followers about love, unrestrained, non-judgmental, all-encompassing, that can and will break down all barriers, that has the potential to unite all people, that promises hope. Pentecost is our day to become boldly aware of our call as followers of Jesus. Indeed, Pentecost is a movement that is as real today as it was in biblical times, real because it takes what Jesus taught of love and bestows that gift upon each of us. Pentecost is a movement of hope and justice, of love and justice, of harmony and peace among all peoples. It is the awareness that every one of us has been called to rise up and carry that banner into every corner of our world. If Pentecost is the birthday of the Christian church, then it behooves us to consider how we become true witnesses of that milestone, and more than consider, to act. Act in ways that demonstrate the love that defines us as people of faith. Act in ways that conquer hatred and violence toward others. Act in ways that unite rather than divide. Build rather than destroy. Hope rather than fear. So today, on this Pentecost, while we are in such extraordinary times that find us unable to physically worship together, may we lift up the true meaning of this day as one that sparks a movement of love that cannot be stopped, no matter what stands in the way. Recognize the Spirit that washes over you today as a flame that, joining together with others, will build a fire of hope for all the world. Blessings and peace to you this day.